Dude, it's 3 in the fucking morning. What do you want?
Well, I have an idea for a video. You want to hear it?
No. Couldn't give any less of a shit.
Well, it's a video about Spider-Man and how they make him take off his mask in all of his movies.
Who the fuck wants another video on Spider-Man?
I don't know, the same people who want another review of The Phantom Menace?
Touché.
Anyway, it's not just another Spider-Man video. It's going into capitalism and the inherent flaws of the film industry.
Well, if you're calling for my advice, I'd say no one's gonna watch it, so don't bother.
Actually, I was going to ask you for a cameo.
There is no fucking way on God's green... You're recording this, aren't you?
Well, nice chat, bye!
Motherfucker!
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out!
Now, like everyone else, I saw No Way Home last year and loved it. I wish I could be just another cynic who hates Marvel movies, but I couldn't help but have a great time watching the movie. And, like everyone else, I was hopelessly waiting for, spoiler alert, the other Spider-Man show up. Specifically Tobey. I'm sorry, Andrew, but Tobey Maguire was my Spider-Man. And seeing him on screen again was like seeing an old friend. But while I was definitely excited to see him, something bothered me. Why was he dressed like that? Immediately my speculative mind got the better of me and I started assuming the only way they could get Tobey back was by having him not wear his costume, having him wear that. And then this line happens.
So wait, are you gonna go into battle dressed as a cool youth pastor, or you got your suit? Good.
Phew! So he is wearing the costume. And obviously they're just holding off from showing it to make some big epic reveal, right? I mean, that makes sense to me. This is like the best Spider-Man costume they've ever had. And then in the next scene, he just kinda has it. He just already has it on. No reveal, but his mask isn't on. So obviously they're waiting to do some epic big reveal for the mask, right? Well, he puts that here. You kind of see it here. And then here. It never really gets a close-up shot. I guess you could say that this is kind of close-up, but I mean, it's kind of obscured by all the lightning or whatever, so I don't know if that really counts. And then he proceeds to take off the mask. In fact, all of them take off their masks at this point. And then they don't have it on the rest of the film. Which leads me to ask the question, why is Hollywood afraid of Spider-Man's mask? This video is going to go into a lot of things, including superheroes, their relation to masks, and of course, capitalism. Ultimately, to get to my main hypothesis, which is Hollywood doesn't care about making art, just money. But let's take a few steps back for a moment. No Way Home is not the only film that is wary of Spider-Man and his mask. In fact, if you look at the climaxes of each Spider-Man film, at a certain point, they all inevitably take off their masks some point during the climax. And to help illustrate this point, I've made a nice graph. Look at how nice the graph is. So in the first column, you see reasons why he takes off his mask. Either it's torn off, it's plot motivated, or it's completely unmotivated. And in the second column, you see the amount of time it is off during the climax. Either it's off the majority of the fight, 50-50, or almost not at all. So for example, at the very beginning of the Amazing Spider-Man fight, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man fights the Lizard, and the Lizard captures him, wrangles him around his tongue, and the Lizard takes off Spider-Man's mask. This is at the very, very beginning of the fight. The rest of the movie, he doesn't have a mask. This is what I would call completely unmotivated, because the Lizard already knows who Spider-Man is, as shown earlier in the film. So there's no reason for him to take off his mask there, except to maybe taunt him better, but I mean, who cares? Skipping over into the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, he keeps his mask on the majority of the fight. Only while there's a small break in between the action, he briefly talks to the other Spider-Man by taking off his mask. Now this is, again, completely unmotivated, but it's only for a small portion of the fight. But you do have to ask why he even does it then. I guess to talk to them better, but I mean, that's a flimsy excuse. In the middle, we have Spider-Man 2, which is my personal favorite Spider-Man film. He keeps on the Spider-Man mask about 50% of the fight. And when he does take it off, it's plot motivated. He needs to uncrazy Dr. Octopus, and he needs to do that by calling back to something he had said earlier in the film.
We have to shut it down. Please tell me how.
Peter Parker.
You once spoke to me about intelligence. That it was a gift to be used for the good of mankind.
A privilege.
A point only made more clear by him having the mask off. Also, this is relevant because Mary Jane sees him with his mask on, which leads into the resolution of the film. So that is probably the golden standard, probably the best way to do it. So, okay, why do filmmakers do this? Well, for one, it must be really annoying to have a character with a mask over their face throughout big portions of their film, because so much of a movie is just wanting to see someone's facial expressions, wanting to see how they react to certain situations, and so this putting on a mask is very limiting. There's very few examples of it happening in films. Even in other superhero movies, usually you can see the bottom half of their face, or they just don't have a mask at all. Outside of superhero films, there's of course V for Vendetta, but he's not the main character. Recently, we saw it successfully in The Mandalorian, but he is already a very stoic character to begin with, so we already know he's not going to have that many facial expressions. And even in that show, at least once a season, he takes off his mask anyway, so whatever. Sam Raimi expressed frustration with this, having two of his main characters wearing masks during big portions of the film. He would specifically instruct Willem Dafoe to use his body as much as possible to try to still give the character some emotion. Ultimately, movies have a big disadvantage versus comics. Comics, the artist can just illustrate the character's emotions even through the mask. So that's very unfortunate. That's a thing movies just simply cannot do. Is what I would be saying if not for a little film that came out called Deadpool.
Hey, yeah, I wanna shoot, baby.
Deadpool, a character with a similar problem to Spider-Man in terms of wearing a full face mask, decided fuck it and just animated the mask so that it could also give facial expressions, and it looked great. And for a second, it looked like Tom Holland's Spider-Man was going to go in that direction. When the Civil War trailer debuted, attentive viewers could notice that Spider-Man's new costume included technical eye-moving things that let his eyes move and let him express emotions. So suddenly, seemingly there wasn't a need for him to take off his mask. Except he does. And then every other film preceding that, he continues to take off his mask during some crucial point in the climax, just like all the other films. Okay, so what's the real problem here? And this is only one man's opinion, but I would speculate that it's money. Studios love money. It's funny because Spider-Man is supposed to be a nerd, but every time they cast him, they're definitely not going with the nerd mindset, except maybe Tobey Maguire. They're going with who is America's next top model, or Britain's next top model, apparently. And they don't want his face covered up because that's the merchandise, I guess. Also, these actors cost a lot of money. Tobey Maguire was paid $15 million for Spider-Man 3, plus points in the back end. They're not giving that kind of money to an actor who's just going to do voiceover the whole film, and then have a stunt actor do all the work. I wrote this line before finding out that Steve Carell was paid $12.5 million for Minions 2: Rise of Gru. Just ignore that, I guess. Another example of this is the 1990s not classic film Judge Dredd. You see, in the comics, Judge Dredd's job involves him not taking off his mask. He is legally bound to never take off his mask, ever. And not only that, the character of Judge Dredd is so determined to follow the rules to a T that he would never willingly take off his mask. But when you cast Sylvester Stallone in a $100 million blockbuster, any sense of staying accurate to that part of the character's lore is thrown completely out the window. It also probably does not help that they ended up making a remake of Judge Dredd where Carl Urban plays Dredd, and actually wears the mask the entire movie, and the film bombed. Probably not giving studios any confidence in that front. Did you know that Rob Schneider was in the first Judge Dredd? He was also in Demolition Man, also starring Sylvester Stallone. I guess they had a thing or whatever. Anyway, moving on. Horror films are a unique counterexample to this. It's preferred that iconic characters like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees keep their masks on the entirety of the film because that's scarier. In that sense, having like a faceless mask where you can't see anyone's expression is a plus, not a minus. But of course, eventually, they will occasionally also take off their masks for some final scare or to show how mangled the face is or whatever. So they'll even do that. So, if you're a character in a movie and you have a mask that covers your face, at a certain point, it will be taken off. But is that right? It feels so weird that a character who so much of his mythos is about keeping his identity a secret so his loved ones don't get hurt, inevitably always has a plot point about people finding out who he is and then him having to deal with it. Like, damn Peter, you suck at doing this part of your job. You always get caught. And this is also inevitably why the majority of Spider-Man films ends with the villain dying through some complicated way, because obviously Spider-Man can't kill him, so they always die by their own hand, and they never stick around to like be in another movie or something, unless it's a multiverse shit, of course. It kind of limits the types of stories you're able to tell with this character. And it's really not how the comics work. I bet, I'm not an avid reader of comics, but something like people finding out who Spider-Man is not something that happens every issue, you know? It happens maybe once every like 5 or 6 years, you know? And then even then it's comics, so they're just, the person just gets their mind wiped or some other ludicrous bullshit or whatever, but point still stands, he's not supposed to constantly be figured out as Spider-Man. Look, I honestly don't know why I made this video. I don't think, even if Hollywood watched this, they're not going to change anything about it. When Spider-Man gets rebooted in a couple of years, it's going to be the same shit all over again. Whatever, I get it. But, I don't know, it's just kind of sad to think about. Because I think if you kind of let that part of it go, you know, just let the character wear his mask, you could kind of open the world up to new stories, I guess. Or maybe I'm just full of crap. I don't know. But main hypothesis here, Hollywood does not care about art, just money.
Any size, catch your seeds, just like flies, look out! Here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man.